sexism in urban planning. So good, it's so good. Oh, perfection. Women. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This week we're talking about something very interesting and something that you probably may never have thought about. And obviously sexism is everywhere, but I'm still just so shocked when it really is everywhere in places that you just do not think. So this week we're talking about sexism in urban planning and how cities aren't built for women. So we're talking things like architecture, like buildings, roads, infrastructure, all that kind of thing, and how it's designed in a way that just doesn't take account to women's lives and just what we do and just how the world is for us. And it's honestly fascinating. So we're going to talk through some of examples of bad things basically that need to be fixed for women in the world, and some solutions that other countries around the world have done and have implemented which have had good outcomes. And hopefully through this you'll see just the importance of having a gendered perspective on literally everything, and that includes how we design our cities and our countries. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, so let's get started. So I think firstly, obviously it's so important to mention like why cities aren't designed for women, and the most obvious is that cities aren't designed by women. Ding, ding, ding. Like obviously we all know the vast majority of so many industries in the world are male dominated, and that includes things like urban planners, architects, builders, like contractors, constructors, that's not a word. People in construction, people in government who like contract out these things and liaise with the planners and make these bits of infrastructure come to life. So that obviously is like one of the major reasons why a woman's perspective isn't taken into account. And it's not to say that, you know, automatically introducing women into that system will help, but it definitely probably will. Like, I mean, there could be men in there who would offer a gender perspective as well, but unfortunately the vast majority of men don't have that. And why would they? They're men. The world is designed for them. So they're not going to see when things aren't made for other people, because like it doesn't affect them. Whereas women do see what affects us and how the world isn't made for us. So we're the best people to offer solutions to that. So there should be more women in all of these fields, and I think that would be a great help. So I'm going to give loads of examples. Some are like kind of a bit more serious, some are more light-hearted, but they're all kind of varying things. And as well, honestly, like these are just kind of prompts for you to go Google some more, do some research, hear what I have to say, and then go off and try and learn some more. So first up is the issue of women drive less than men. And this is fascinating, and it could be for a couple of reasons. One is money. We all know women make less money than men for various reasons, and so cars are expensive. So it's a fact, like more women than men use public transport. It could also be laws. Like we know that women in Saudi Arabia are like just kind of getting to drive now, as an example, but a lot of laws of that could still be in place, or they may have only kind of recently been introduced in the last, 10, 20, 30 years. And so if men have been driving for all those years before that, there is bound to be a kind of a difference there, and it will take time to even out. So yeah, for many reasons, those two in particular, women drive less than men. And so public transport needs to be better. But when it's all men designing these things and they think, well, sure, I drive, like there's no incentive for them to try and improve public transport because they don't use it as much. So it's really, really interesting. It's also really interesting to point out that like the actual lines of public transport, so let's take like a underground system, for example, say the line goes from A to B. If you take into account in general, this is very generalized now, women have lots of errands to run. Say if you are, have your job, but you're also a mother, and as we all know, women still do the vast majority of household work and child minding work. So this is very plausible. You might have to do a couple different errands. You might have to go to the shop to pick up food for dinner. You might have to go pick up your kid from play school. Then you might have to go to work. And so these like inflexible lines of public transport are not conducive to that. Again, in general, men might have to just drive from literally home to work on a main road and don't have to stop or think of anything else on the way. And so roads are like great and perfect, but the public transport, which is used more by women and needs to be more flexible, is not. And so it literally just affects women's lives and their ability to go around doing their day. So that's it's like the first example of where a gender perspective could be introduced. And you basically just look at things from a woman's point of view, what a woman does in a day, week, month, or whatever, and see, is this public transport helping her out? and looking at it through her lens. Another major one, obviously, related to this is the amount of harassment and sexual violence, sexual assaults that women experience on things like public transport. Again, so a fascinating example done in a Swedish town was they basically introduced the concept of night stops. So basically, obviously, like you have your normal stops during the day, ABC, but they basically introduced this concept where at nighttime, like after a certain, but basically when it was dark, that you could basically ask the bus driver to stop like anywhere, even if it's not one of the designated stops. And I think this is kind of interesting for people in Ireland because we often know that on country roads you can kind of do that anyway, but I think that would be an amazing thing to introduce in cities and just basically everywhere. And basically why they introduced this was because they were looking at it again through gendered lens, and they were seeing that less women were taking public transport at night time because they didn't feel safe, let's say like getting off the bus or whatever, getting off the metro and walking to their house. Whereas if they just introduce these night stops and say, well, my house is there, can you stop right there? And they did, and less women were harassed. And also what they did was, if say a woman was getting off a bus, they just opened like the front door of the bus and not the middle one, and made sure that no one else gets off the bus with her, so that no one can follow her or whatever. So isn't that just, fascinating? Like it's so good. It's so good. It's just like, why doesn't everybody do stuff like this? Oh, perfection. And like so simple, and like it's nighttime, so there's probably not that many people riding the bus anyway, so like probably doesn't add that much time onto your journey to be stopping at like 1 or 2 or 3 kind of extra stops. Like it's so ingenious and so simple and adds so much value to the lives of women and our feeling of safety. So it's just perfection. Things like that, guys, things like that. Again, kind of along that line is the issue of women cycling. So as said, men drive more than women, but women actually don't cycle that much. And basically there was kind of research done on like why, in Australia actually, on why this was the case. And a lot of times it was a feeling like people didn't want you there, like drivers don't want you there. And I feel this as well when I'm cycling, like in Ireland, for example. I feel like I'm like, oh my god, all the cars hate me. And I know it's true, like half of them do. We don't see cyclists as deserving of the road. Women reported in this study that they were always shouted at, they were harassed, like beeped at, just felt like really, really unsafe. And so they just then didn't want to cycle. And obviously like a big solution to that, and just cyclists in general, but particularly women cyclists, because they're getting a lot of the brunt of this, is just obviously introduce more cycle lanes and make it more welcoming for cyclists, and to show the drivers that, okay, they have their space here, like they are allowed to be here and you can't like harass people cycling. And again, like a lot of the times, like you don't need to like widen the road or do any like big construction. It's simply a matter of like looking at the space that's there and just allocating a bit of the road to a cycle lane. Like again, very, very simple and very, very easy. And cycling is good for you and happy and nice and gets you there quicker. And like, to be honest, if a man is like chasing you or harassing you, you're going to be able to escape a lot more quickly on a bike than you are if you were just like walking or something. So yeah, more cyclists. Another really interesting one is like footpaths and curbs and sidewalks and everything. So just the way they're designed. So a couple of things about that is, one, sometimes they can be really, really narrow. And if you're a woman pushing a buggy, because you are a mother and you are more likely to have the buggy than your husband is or a man is, if it's very, very narrow, you might not be able to fit you and the buggy on there, or you might just be able to fit you and the buggy on there, therefore nobody else can pass you. Therefore they then resent mothers with babies, and they resent babies and kids, and we already have enough of that resentment in the world. So we need to make curbs wider so that people with prams and buggies can comfortably fit there, and other people can also comfortably fit there. Like again, so simple, so effective. And that's if the footpaths are even there at all. Like we need to have them at all, because obviously, again, women walk more and they drive less, so they need to be on footpaths more. And if there's no footpaths, you're on a road and it's very dangerous, particularly if you have a buggy. Very, very simple. Footpaths. Oh, perfection. A lot of times as well, they're also really high. And I think, again, this could be because they're designed by men and they design things with men in mind. Men are in general taller, so they can go up on tall footpaths more easier, whereas women are generally shorter and might struggle, genuinely, like it's not even funny, like they might actually struggle getting onto a really tall footpath. I know sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I'm kind of tall, but I'm like, oh my god, can I even get up on this footpath? So yeah, shorter footpaths. Another obviously major one is poorly lit alleyways. Obviously every woman ever knows that if you have a choice between a lit alleyway and a non-lit alleyway, you choose the lit one, because you need to be able to see where you're going, if someone's coming after you, which they might well be, you need there to be lights. And if there are not lights, you are not safe. You don't feel safe. You can't, you will literally never walk down that road. Or if you do, you will run. We've all been there. We've all run down streets because you fear that something's going to happen. And so when things like alleyways, streets, anything are being designed, there needs to be adequate lighting. And again, very, very simple, and something that men may not think of because men are in general safe when they're walking down poorly lit alleyways, or they can at least defend themselves, probably to a greater degree than maybe women can because they are in general stronger. Again, a lot of generalizations, but a lot of truth. So like lights, very, very simple. So like again, all these things are so simple, and they don't require like a lot of brain knowledge, but they are just so powerful and so effective. So we should all get on board. Another really interesting one that I learned recently is like short time frames. Let's say, you know, when the green man goes, and like, I mean, we all know that's an issue in itself, being a green man and not a green person or woman or whatever. But shorter time frames of like when it's like green and then you have to like run across. That's really interesting because again, women with buggies need more time. So interesting. Like, who would have thought about this stuff? Not me, and probably not men designing them, lol. But also older people need more time. Who lives longer in the world? Women or men? Women. There's going to be more old women in the world, therefore you need time. So if men think, well, I'm going to die at 70 and I can cross the road no bother till I'm 70, then I'm not going to need a longer time for the green man to go. Whereas a woman is thinking, well, I'm probably going to live till I'm like 85 or 90, and I definitely will be walking slower by that time, so I definitely would enjoy a longer green man time. Like, oh, like, come on. And then another major one, which actually kind of inspired this video, and I'll leave a video that's more specifically about this down below, which everyone should watch. It's only a 12 minute song, it's fascinating. But basically, again, in Sweden, they basically did this experiment. And they found that basically what they had been doing is, it obviously snows a lot, and they had, you know, in their heads, they thought, well, we'll clear the main roads first. Like, that makes sense. Yeah, like, story. But what they were finding, and the video will explain this much better than I can, but what they were finding was that a lot of women, that 3/4, I'm messing this up, a 3-to-1 ratio, I don't even know, in terms of women to men, were slipping, were falling, were having accidents that winter. And they were like, why are like 75% of the people who are being injured women and only 25% of people being injured are men? And basically what they found was, going back to the fact that women drive less than men, they were clearing the main roads first of the snow. So men were grand in their cars, no bother. Women walk more. Women have buggies. Basically, when they ploughed the snow off the roads, it went on to the footpaths. Women couldn't use the footpaths. Women used the footpaths more. So there was snow on them. They were slipping, they were falling, they were injuring themselves. Like what? Like, as in, like, thank God they did this experiment. And thank God they looked at things through a different perspective and figured all this out. Oh my God. And again, what was so interesting is that so many of the roads were like major roads, and they were leading to male-dominated workplaces, because as we all know, so many workplaces are dominated by men. So there was just like so many men, no bother, cruising in their car on their main road to their main area of work, where so many of them worked. And women were there like, sorry, can I get a bit of snow removal here on the footpath? And another fascinating point to the whole women needing to run errands things, they weren't using the main roads as much, because they say needed to, you know, drop their kid off at play school. They might then, you know, have to go to their parents' house, because again, the majority of care work falls on women, and they care for their parents, might have to go there. They might have to go to work. Then again, might have to go to the supermarket on the way home. And so they weren't using these major roads like highways or whatever. They're using these back roads, which were not given priority for the snow. So again, even if they were driving, they were still suffering the consequences of a non-gendered view on the snow removal. So it was just like, they literally just couldn't win. Like, it's so fascinating, and please watch the video down below. So basically what they did was, they looked at all of this, and again, watching the video below, they started with, instead of clearing the main roads like they had been doing of the snow, they started with like children's play schools, because you drop the kid off first before you go to work. Started with hospitals, started with footpaths, started with everything, and then once they were all done, then got to the main roads. And everyone was happy. And again, it didn't cost any more money. They simply just reallocated the time and the whatever to what they were already doing. And it helps everyone. Like, it's so fascinating. Again, so simple, but like you need to apply gender lens to figure this out. Finally, I want to talk about one thing that is so disturbing, but is actually, like, once I looked into it more, I was like, oh, this is actually a thing. And that is phallic architecture. So people might not know what phallic means. It basically is like architecture that is in the shape of a penis or looks like a penis, basically like phallic, I guess. I've actually Googled the definition. Phallic is relating to or resembling a phallus or erect penis. So phallic architecture is a really, really big thing. It is so concerning. And basically what like sociologists and whatever have like kind of discovered is that like unconsciously or consciously, who knows, so many buildings in our world are shaped phallically or whatever, most often skyscrapers that dominate the landscape because that's like all you see and you're like, wow. And again, consciously or unconsciously, they're seen as symbols of male domination, power, political authority. And it's just like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you're just like, is this done on purpose? Is it not? And it's kind of disturbing. And it's like we already see like, you know, like penises like drawn everywhere on like graffiti or whatever. And it's just like to think about the fact that like you are literally, if you live in a big city or whatever, you're surrounded by buildings that were, again, consciously or unconsciously designed to represent the male or the penis. It's so disturbing. And actually it's really, it just actually makes me uncomfortable. I'm just like, so again, and I've talked about this in videos, like the penis is used as this weapon, and this really, you know, like women are literally like, people expose themselves to them on public transport or, you know, just like in a park or whatever, and the penis is so often used as a weapon and something to dominate over women. And I think that's really, really interesting and really just unnerving that there are so many buildings, like tall buildings that were shaped like this. And that is so, so concerning. And again, I've talked about how like it's just so silly to even kind of equate, you know, a penis with power, but obviously this is a thing. And again, I'll leave some links down below which show you like that this is a very real thing. Some examples are the Gherkin in London. And the Gherkin isn't even its real name, but actually who knew that Gherkin was slang for a small penis? So again, that's like even if it was like unconsciously designed that way, they then like turn into those things, and it's like, haha, like the Gherkin, like small penis. Like when do we ever think we'd see a building and be like, ha, yay, vagina? People would be literally disgusted. Another one is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. People used to liken it to like a half erect penis, and then basically the Pope was raging, and they used to like sell things being like, haha, half erect penis at Leaning Tower of Pisa, and basically now the Pope was raging, so you're fined €500 if you sell anything that's like that. But again, it's just like, it's like, why do we need to make buildings or like just even compare buildings to men's penises? Why do we need to constantly talk about men's penises? Like there are more to life and men than their penises. So that's just a funny example that I thought was really, and actually not even funny, it's actually really disturbing, but very, very interesting. Would encourage everyone to go look some more. So those are just some of the examples I have. There are probably so many more, but those are just ones I thought were really interesting and that we can all see and experience on a daily basis, and it's so, so interesting. Basically, I just wanted to prove to you and show you that like basically what's known as gender mainstreaming is basically just introducing a gendered perspective into things. So things like when you're building buildings and public transport and infrastructure, like just include a woman's perspective or a gender perspective on something and see if you will design this differently. Because right now, so many of the things that we have in this world, like literally everything, is designed for men. And it is about time that we started designing things for women, particularly cities that we literally live in every single day and that we traverse in every single day. Imagine living in a world that wasn't designed for you. Imagine. The women listening to this, and any other actually oppressed group, to be honest, knows what that's like. Imagine constantly living in a world that wasn't designed for you. So if there's just these things that we can do, we can just look at things through a different perspective and just see what can be done. Oh, I think it's important to mention as well that, like, you know, it's not like I think that like all the men are sitting around a boardroom and they're thinking, how can we make this world for us and how can we design it for us? Like, that's not happening to a great degree, I would think. So often all of this is just unconscious because, again, as I said, like they design things for them and it works for them. So why would they think they need to change? But it's there unconsciously. They don't think about other people and how other people might interact with this road or this public transportation system or whatever. And so it's just, yeah, it might not be consciously done, but it does need to be consciously rectified. I sound very fancy saying consciously rectified. It's also just like not even about like gender half the time. Like so often, as we know, that like if things would just be more efficient and like just a better quality if everyone was taken into consideration. Like I'm sure that when they were in Sweden and they were doing the snow or whatever, like that probably stopped so many women from getting to work on time. It sent so many women unnecessarily to the hospital, which had loads of costs. Whereas if they just looked at the snow and said, how can we do this differently? Injuries went down, costs went down. It didn't cost them anything to change their snowplow route and then add it. Like, so it actually isn't even about like gender or making the world better for women. It's actually just about like efficiency and quality and just making the world better for everyone, making things run smoother. It helps to have different perspectives when you're designing things because it benefits everyone. Oh. So that is this week's video. I hope you learned something and understand the importance of gendered perspectives on things, if I have said that enough. Again, thank you so much. If you want to subscribe, that would be amazing, or give the video a thumbs up or leave a comment with any other thoughts or ideas that you have for making a city more gender friendly and fair and lovelier and equal for all. And I will see you all in next week's video. Thank you. Bye.